We have some time for questions and answers now. If you do want to ask a question, please wait for the microphone to arrive, because the conference is being streamed on the web, as you probably know. And also, to those of you who may be watching on the web, if you want to participate in the questions and answers, we have Mark Parsons tracking it's a Twitter stream you're tracking, is it, Mark? And so if there are questions that are coming from not in this room on Twitter, Mark will put them to the panel. So, open to questions.
Hello. Just want to ask, is there any short-term and long-term goal, and how you achieve these in terms of time? For example, in how many years you want to achieve this, and how long time this RDA will be survive you plan? So.
Okay. What are the short and long-term goals, and what does short and long mean? Who fancies picking that one up?
Test?
Yeah, that's on. I think that was on.
Is it on? Test? Yeah, there it is. Okay. Well, I think one of the quick answers is something that Chris just mentioned, and that is adoption. I mean, at the end of the day, adoption is key. So short-term and long-term, if those are happening, you're halfway, if not three-quarters of the way there, of having these things taking place.
Let's take the example of the Internet Engineering Task Force. The IETF merged from a sequence of organizations over a period of, 25 years or so. And so the key characteristic of this is that the answer today that works today will not be the answer that works tomorrow. So RDA must be an evolutionary organization. You'll start out with one governance model, but certainly you will change that over time as the needs and the opportunities change. So what RDA will be tomorrow is not necessarily what it will be today, but it is necessary to get started. The second is that a global infrastructure of this nature involves significant investments, and those investments will persist over time. And so the infrastructure that we're talking about should persist for a relatively long period of time. Whether RDA will continue to be involved or not will depend on you and your success in making this happen. But the infrastructure, I'm convinced, will persist because it has such value.
If I may give another twist to it, although I agree completely to what a previous speaker said, it is my short-term goal would be delivery of results, because it's only through delivery of concrete results in the short term that this can be really adopted. And then the long-term goal is sustainability, be sustainable on its own, with optimized with fine-tuned governance. But really the urgent thing now, I think, is really that it starts working, and within a short time we'll have some concrete results, because it's for the results that will help us take the next steps.
Okay. Any other questions?
Hi, Sandra Collins from the Digital Repository of Ireland. I think this is a really good model where the funding agencies are working side by side with the researchers, but with the arm's length distance. It sounds really good, I think. But what concrete things will the funding agencies do? What steps will you take so that as the RDA reaches consensus and findings, that these findings, consensus, what can you do to help adoption so that we avoid what Peter was talking about earlier, where there's consensus, there's recommendations, and then they're gone?
I give you a couple of responses. I mean, if the RDA comes up with, let's say, a really good example of whether it's best practices, whether it's certain types of, you pick any area you want, and you get adoption on a wide scale, it becomes very easy for funding agencies to say, okay, let's use this one. Let's stop funding 8 other ones. And so I think you begin to see winnowing and best practices taking place. So it makes it easier for the agencies to take advantage of that. So I think That's one of the things that I'd be looking for out of this group. What makes sense? Where should we go down? What's ready to be mature and take advantage of? And clearly, I think, as I mentioned in my remarks about other groups involved, is providing funding to the scientists to indeed continue that particular set of activities.
I suppose one of the instances of this is we heard from the community quite broadly in the United States that planning for data management was an important thing for the future of science, and the National Science Foundation adopted a policy requiring data management planning in proposals submitted to the foundation. The President's recent memorandum calls for that amongst all science funding agencies. So there's an example where the government is an early adopter of a community recommendation that's having a significant impact.
And I can also say something concerning the fact that because we are together, one intangible deliverable will be critical mass. Because what we see sometimes is that the approaches are, I mean, we saw the islands and the bridges we need to bridge, but for adoption, at a certain point in time, you need critical mass. And so the fact that the funders are more or less aligning indirectly through RDA, it's an important outcome in order to get this dimension for adoption.
Let me suggest it's also a two-way street. I mean, the point is, if you're working on things that the funding agencies support, it sort of gives you also a little more credibility and can help build that critical mass.
Yeah, I really agree. I think that's very important because there's a very vibrant community here willing to build that consensus, but you can amplify the results by helping the adoption process. Yeah.
Give us pointers.
Thank you. Good. So, there's Mark has a question from the Twitter.
Yeah, a question from the outside world. What will the RDAC's role, the Colloquium's role, be in ensuring long-term funding commitments from funders to support permanent data infrastructure?
As it's its role to support permanent data infrastructure from the funders.
Maybe Mark could repeat the question.
Could you repeat the question, Mark?
What is the role of the Research Data Alliance Colloquium, the RDAC, it's already gone off, in ensuring long-term funding?
For infrastructure.
I get a couple of responses. I mean, if you look at the three groups that are funding it now, Australia, the US, and the EC, clearly we're all interested in long-term data national infrastructures. And the point is, as Kostas said earlier, that is a long-term goal, whether it's 2020 or beyond. So I think that's already there. And the issue is, we want to see, could we get other countries or agencies willing to do that? If indeed they do that, we've sort of answered the question. We're in it for the long haul. This is not something that is done next year. It's going to take multiple years to play out and get where we want to go with it.
Yes. So I'm Sean Hill from INCF in Stockholm. Clearly, adoption is key, but I think the key to adoption is usability. And I think that's something that hasn't been focused on, at least in the discussion so far. And I think that's one of the greatest challenges that we all face. Scientists are human, and they have a hard time adopting new technologies, using them, making sure that the data actually gets out there, is annotated. How do we make semantic annotation easy to do? How do we make data sharing easy to do? All of these steps require very specific, focused efforts, and I would love to hear any of your thoughts on how RDA can address the issue of usability.
Well, set up an interest group, form a working group, bring people around you, implement, test, deliver.
Yeah. Thank you. We'll move on to, we haven't got much time more, but a little bit. Yes, I think the microphone, there's one over there already, sorry. It's hard to follow.
John Kudsey from the California Digital Library. It's for Chris Greer. Could you say a little bit more about the persistent identification framework you mentioned?
Well, I hope you'll be hearing quite a bit more about that over the next several days as that working group gets together. I don't want to, get in front of that group by any means. What I meant by that is that we're looking to that group and others across RDA for technical solutions that actually allow us to track digital objects over time as they move from one application to another. There's a complex landscape of persistent identifier schemes out there today where they exist, and in many places they don't exist. So we're looking to RDA to provide us with technical recommendations that would help tie those schemes together and enable their implementation in places where they don't exist today.
Okay.
Thanks.
So let's have one last question from this side of the room because they've all been over there. Yanis, yeah. Sorry, David. And then I'm going to take the last couple of minutes to test Carlos's methodology of humming that he mentioned.
This is a question for RDAC, so probably Alan or anyone else. You mentioned about the criteria for funding agencies to participate. Is the idea that every national funding agency will fund its own, or will pour money into a common pool and RDAC will handle that? And also, you mentioned about 3 years commitment. Are there any minimums, or what are there any details about that?
Okay, a couple quick comments. To answer your first question, the initial importance, I think, is to fund the people doing the work. I mean, the idea isn't to fund the organization per se. Now, that doesn't mean that won't happen, but the first out of the box is you have to fund the community to do the work. So that would be my first comment to you. So we want national agencies to say, we think this is important enough that we provide funding for our researchers to participate. Okay? From their own nation. If they want to do other nations, that's fine too, but certainly from their own. If they're not willing to do that, then I'm not sure they should join the colloquium. Okay? Your second part, though, is if they want to fund the central organization, that's fine too. In fact, we'll see some of that as well, but that's sort of a secondary piece. Your other question was? Yeah, thresholds. We punted on that, to be honest. I had put down some numbers, but thought that was maybe too hard at this point. We thought it was more important to get out the point that we want other people to join, and we'll start working that over the next couple of weeks. We really don't have an answer to that, but you can't come in and say, oh, we funded one person to do this, can we join? That's clearly not enough. So how much is it? It's bigger than a bread box. Is it a house? You know, we need to do that part yet. So
I think it's to be clear about the difference between funding RDA and funding the activities that RDA is coordinating.
Okay, yeah, the two pieces are funding the activities the RDA does is really important, and that's one of the things we want to see happen. Funding also, for example, this plenary or this sort of meetings cost money as well, so we're looking for the groups to help fund, the funding agencies may help support that as well. So there's two definite things that each agency can do, each organization.
And they're quite different because of what you were saying about not having direct control of RDA. Okay, so in the last couple of minutes, I just wanted to test out this methodology of humming that's used by some other organizations, IETF in particular, and it's a way of gauging consensus. And I warn you, you're going to have to do some work now. You're going to have to hum. The idea is that you put forward a proposal, and if the members of the audience agree with the proposal, they hum. If they disagree, they keep quiet. And then you put the counter proposal, the opposite proposal, and then you hum to agree or don't hum to keep quiet. And in that way, you can see what the feeling is for a particular proposal. So I'm going to start trying to just calibrate the instrument with what I hope is a fairly easy question, first of all. So the first question, and if you agree, I'll tell you when to hum. The first question is whether Wikipedia is a good thing for open knowledge across the globe. So if you agree with that proposal, could you now hum? Okay. And if you disagree with that, could you hum? Okay. That was easy. That was, I must admit, the outcome I expected. The second one, a little bit more difficult. You might have to think a moment. Having a Twitter chat stream running during a conference is a good thing to broaden participation in the conference and allow people to express their views. So if you agree with that proposal, please hum. And if you disagree, please hum. I thought there might be a little bit. I think the agrees had a slightly louder hum, and we don't want anyone cheating by humming loudly, of course. You just hum in a way that comes naturally, please. Okay, so the third question, and this one gets a tiny bit more serious, but I can't promise that any action will be taken as a consequence of the humming. And the panel don't know this is coming, by the way. So Peter Fox this morning made a very interesting comment. He said that the alliances of this kind that work do not have funding for the membership to participate in the alliance. Obviously, the people here have all got funding for their day jobs, and they come here because they believe that coming here will help them do the day job that they are paid by somebody to do. But there is no funding actually to come to participate in the RDA. Now, that was the point Peter made very clearly this morning. So if you agree with that point, please hum. And if you disagree, please hum. Okay. So there were both views, but I think there was a slightly stronger view in agreement with Peter's point. Anyway, so that was a bit of hum, and I think it's quite interesting. And, you know,
yes,
I suggest that we only do the humming when it's actually asked for, not, not in the middle of somebody's talk. But, of course, this is a membership organisation, and if people want to hum during a talk, who am I to say no? Okay, so thank you for that session, and thank you for the speakers. It was very good and informative.